In Thank you very much, Samantha, and welcome everybody today for joining us. Truly excited to have Bill Ortiz with us today as our franchisee interview of the month. As a reminder, my name is Mike Condon. I'm the franchise development leader here at HomeWell, along with our team that you see on the screen. And as I said, I have the pleasure of having a great conversation today with Bill Ortiz. Bill is out of Manhattan Beach, California. Right? Correct, Manhattan Beach. I said it right.
Got it.
And as we've really grown and expanded over the last 18 months, we are getting a lot of interest in the California market. So I'm really excited to be able to get Bill on here and share his expertise. He's been open for just over 2 years now, has seen some great success, going to be expanding into another territory. So a lot of topics I'm excited to dive into today. But like always, I love to start in the beginning. I'd love to start a little bit with you, Bill, on, how did you get to us here at HomeWell? I know as you went through the education process with us, you were looking at a few different concepts and really love to share with you a little bit about your background and how you ended up here with us today.
Well, my background is completely retail. I don't have any background in home care and in health. I think what touched upon it is my mom suffered of dementia. And as the dementia got worse, my time with her increased. And she didn't live next door. She lived about 45 minutes away. And as the dementia got worse, again, my time with her increased. And she got to a point where she only wanted to see me or my cousin. She helped raise my cousin. She didn't see my kids for the last 3 years of her life. She became recluse. She was combative. As things got worse, I looked at boarding cares. I looked at facilities. I looked at caregivers. She was, again, very combative. So those were things that were really tough for her to take in. But the search for those for places to help my mom, they weren't negative. They were very positive. All the people I've met were very positive. It was a very positive experience. She eventually went to the hospital, went into hospice at a home and care. So she went from home to hospital to the boarding care that I had secured for her, and passed away there. She only spent 3 or 4 days there. But I think my basis for HomeWell was that everyone I dealt with in the industry, and I didn't deal with HomeWell at the time, was very nice. Years later, after COVID, or it was shortly, a couple years later, COVID happened, and it had me searching for a new position. And I had owned a couple of retail stores for 10 years on Melrose. And my wife and I got together. My wife's a teacher. She's not involved with the things that I do. She only supports me. We had a long talk, and she asked me, when was I the happiest? I was the happiest when I owned my own business. So we decided to take money out of my retirement and search for something new. Again, my background, I've been a store manager, district manager, regional manager, director of operations. I've run the whole gamut with big companies and small companies, as well as ownership. So I was really kind of looking at retail, different retail. I looked at some, whether it was convenience stores, clothing stores, some franchises. And to be honest with you, I don't remember how I ran into the people at HomeWell, but fortunately I did. And what I liked about HomeWell was that they knew my name, and I wasn't a number. It wasn't, number 3785 in California. Whether I called the home office in Texas or I talked to other owners, people knew my name and they were friendly. And still to this day, I can call another owner and they may say, "Hey, I'm busy, Bill. I'll get back with you tomorrow, or I'll send you an email." But that's really what I appreciate. Other than the guidance and all that other stuff, what really drew me to HomeWell were the personalities that I dealt with.
Yeah, it something as we continue to grow and scale, is something we're very cognizant of, right? I mean, I think this is a people business, and without people and good people like yourselves, we don't have a business model. So I appreciate you sharing that. So you go through the education process with us. You decide that HomeWell is the right place for you based on your experience and your education and kind of everything you looked at. One of the questions we get is California and licensing. It is a licensure state. There's nothing we can do about that. You were really the second person here at HomeWell to really ever go through that. So share a little bit about your experience there. What did you learn? And as people are listening to this, maybe live or in the future here, and that are looking at California, share with us the insights you have for somebody that's looking at this model and concerned about the licensing, because it is a question we get.
And it is a challenge. I don't want to to dance around the point. It's a challenge here in California. I signed with HomeWell 3 years ago. It was 9 months before I was able to get my license. Now, I don't know if things have changed. When I signed on, it was right after COVID. All the agents at Sacramento that I was dealing with were virtual, so that might have led to the delays. Typically, they say it's 45 to 60 days to 90 days to get your license. It was 9 months for me, and I think I'm fairly smart. I thought I could do it, and I was thinking, oh, I'm going to do it in 2 months. It didn't happen in 2 months. Like I said, it took 9 months. There's about a 10-page form of just a bunch of information and numbers, and it's really confusing because you're not sure what to put into those forms, and you don't want to be incorrect. And then they wanted standard operating procedures, about 20 pages of writing, how you interview people, how you bring people on, how you train people. And that was challenging also. Not putting it together. HomeWell was very helpful. There's a ton of literature at HomeWell. I could just copy and paste and kind of add things to be more specific to my franchise. But the way California does it is very antiquated. And I love living in California, but I'm just trying to be as frank as possible. They correct the SOP part of it, not like a teacher would, where they read the whole thing and go, oh, mistake here, mistake here, mistake here, kind of redo it. If there's a mistake on page 5, and sometimes it's one word, it's the word health. They stop on page 5, you kick it back, and then you get it back and you go, oh, good, I'm ready to rock. And then they'll find a mistake on page 7. They start all over. So it goes back and forth and back and forth. And again, it was after COVID, so I'm not making excuses for the state, but it was a very challenging time. In the state of California, you can't do anything until you have your license. Now, I don't know if there's licensing police out there that are watching us, but you're not supposed to have a business card, so you can't recruit. So when you first opened, we got our license on April 26th. I still remember the day. And we opened on May 1st, but it's not like retail where you open the store and boom, customers start coming in. You can't go after customers because you don't have your product, which are caregivers. So the first thing you do is start recruiting caregivers. It takes a few weeks. When you get some caregivers, then you can start marketing for clients. But it is challenging, but people do it and people get through it, so it's possible. But you want to put your seatbelts on because it could be a rougher ride than you expect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, our expectation when talking with candidates about California is to be real, right? We obviously, our processes from HomeWell side has gotten a lot more efficient in helping than they were even two years ago or 3 years ago in your case. When it comes to that, we've revamped our whole opening services process to ensure that that process can move as fast as possible. And again, some of it is completely out of your control, our control. It's in the state's control. But, looking back now, Bill, would you say that time spent putting the effort in to get your license and growing, obviously you're expanding into a second territory, you must be still pretty happy with your decision?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be talking to you if I was unhappy. HomeWell without HomeWell, we wouldn't be here. And really, the vision for me is not what we're doing now and not what we're going to do in a year, but what we're going to be in 3 years. As you know, Mike, this is a very scalable business. So your profitability is at one point with a certain amount of revenue, but what we can be doing next year and 2 or 3 years from now, that's what really excites me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the fun part. I think, when we talk about some of the challenging states when it comes to licensing is, what's the long-term goal here, right? Being a regulation state and having a license isn't a bad thing. It's just a process you have to work through. And again, that's where we're going to come in and help as much as we can on that process. And I think looking forward, everybody that's moving into California, you're there as well. And I know as a good of a guy as you are, I know you've already said you'd be willing to share your wisdom about what you learned through that process. And what we have found in other states is that just that connection with somebody who's been through it before tends to lead people to move a little bit faster because they're not going to make the same mistake, right? So yeah, I mean, that again, I think is going to be long term, looking at it in a couple of different ways. Another question we do get quite a bit is on the people side of things. Can you talk to us a little bit about, from a staffing side, what did it look like when you started to maybe what does it look like today?
When we started, and I tell this to the people that I do the calls with, is you want to start light. Those payroll numbers, if you start with a staff of 5 or 6 people, that payroll doesn't come back. And so we started with a part-time recruiter, and I was blessed to bring on a care manager that was experienced. So it was just the 3 of us. The part-time recruiter also did a lot of the office work. And you kind of want to wait, especially in a state like California. You don't want to start hiring people right when you apply for the license, because you don't know. And so
Yep.
one of the pieces of advice that one of the other owners gave me when I was doing these calls was exactly that. Don't go out and get an office. Don't go out and buy furniture. Don't hire 7 people or 5 people for your staff. Wait till you get your license and then start making those decisions. So that's kind of the tips that I give people. Start slow and then you can add on. We're at a point now where we have 5 people in the office. I'm sales, and amongst the 5 or 10 other things, whether I pay the bills and all the other stuff that I do, I'm blessed. Like I said, I've got a great care manager that's he's on salary and he works around the clock and he handles. I've been blessed that in 2.5 years, I might have taken 5 calls from customers after they've become customers. So he handles all of that. We have, again, still a part-time recruiter. I have a sales assistant. And what we've done with those 2 positions is they're intermixed. So my assistant, we do some pre-screening with caregivers. So if there's a callback, she knows how to pre-screen or do that 5-minute, 10-minute interview that we do on the phone before we bring them in person. So they're interchangeable. And in the last 4 months, we have promoted a caregiver to be our next care manager. So she's in the office, she's doing scheduling, she handles some of the care, she'll go out and train people. So we're preparing, because of our growth, we're slowly preparing that she's going to take on the next group of clients as we grow past that 1,000, 11, 1,200 hours when it gets too much for one care manager.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel the interactions with your franchise business coach has helped with that process a little bit? And I know it's obviously talking with other owners, you're a smart guy. But do you feel like that interaction? We talk a lot about how the impact of the business coaches helps move our agency owners forward. I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
It's a good. We talk every week, and for me, it's more of bouncing ideas, and I like to
Yeah.
hear what other owners are doing. So my business coach has, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 other owners that she's dealing with. And I'll throw something out and she can say, oh, you know what? They tried that in Utah and it didn't work, or it works great in Utah, or call that owner. But for me, and I think it's different for all the owners, but for me, it's more of bouncing ideas and finding out what's working. And when I have a problem, I don't look to them to solve my problem, but I'll give her my 2 or 3 options and say, hey, I'm thinking of this, I'm thinking of that. What have you heard? What have you done? So that FBC is kind of the hub, the way I look at it, for me to bounce ideas and get some answers of experiences other owners have had.
Yeah. So we had a question come in about staffing in California. Just want to go back to that real quick. It talks about, I know in California you do need a nurse when you submit your license. And correct me if I'm wrong in any of my statements here.
You're wrong there. You don't need a nurse in California.
You do not need a nurse. Perfect. Thank you. And I just wanted to make sure I was accurate in saying that.
Either that or I'm breaking you may be breaking a bunch of rules, but
you're perfect. Perfect. I just wanted to make sure we were right in saying that. So you do not need a nurse in California. Do the caregivers have to be CNAs specific? Do they have to have that license? They do not. Okay, perfect. So Darren, to answer your question, no on both fronts. Makes it a lot easier from that perspective.
There are 2 things that they have to do. They have to register with an organization called Guardian, and I believe it's attached to the state. So any caregiver that works for a licensed agency has to be registered with Guardian, and it costs them $35 to register. We don't pay for it; they pay for it, and they have to be live scanned, and it's a certain type of live scan, and that costs anywhere from $60 to $75. Again, we don't pay for it. Once they are registered with Guardian and their live scan have passed, they can work for any agency in the state. So when we're interviewing, if they're registered with Guardian, those are the hot ones. If we like them, and good, because they don't have to go through the process. We can get them in orientation and get them out in the field. It's the people that haven't, that have taken care of their grandmother or their grandfather or another loved one that have experience, but they're not registered yet. That may take a little bit more time to put them on the books.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. And again, it's a process thing, that is just, as an owner, I'm sure it's something you just kind of have to, as you go through it, you learn. And that's the fun part about being a business owner is, you're going to learn a lot and drink through a fire hose every once in a while, but it's going to make you better when you come out on the other side.
Absolutely.
um, yeah. So, when we think about this business, one of the things that comes up, obviously, from a licensing and then from a staffing side, is client acquisition. So I know when you started your agency, you focused heavily on with secondary referral sources, a place for mom. Talk a little bit about your growth from using that as kind of your primary revenue source to where you are at today from a client acquisition standpoint.
Well, that's really all we do. We have
Okay.
we've perfected the secondary referral market. All our business, other than some personal references or references that we get from clients that have been with us and they turn us on to a friend or a neighbor, all our business has been from secondary referrals. And we typically, I'm not the greatest salesman in the world. I like to think I'm pretty good, but the national average on secondary referrals is 12%. I get 40 to 50 referrals every month, and we hit the national average. Sometimes we sign up 4 clients in a month. Sometimes we do 6 or 7, but on average, we bring on 5 clients every month. And a lot of the clients, they're not always long term. It's a vacation, it's some respite, it's a short term thing. Clients get better, and clients pass away. So if you do the math, oh wow, Bill's got 60 clients. Last year, because he's averaging 5 a month. No, we don't have 60. I wish we had 60 clients, but they come and go, hopefully. And in our case, I can tell you, we've never lost a customer because we had bad service. So our customers go away because they get better or because, unfortunately, they pass away. But if you do a good job with these referrals, if you send out the right caregiver that's going to meet their physical needs and the family's personality and the client's personality, sometimes those 15 hours a week turn into 20 hours a week, turn into 30 hours a week. We have 2 24/7 clients that we service around the clock. It takes 6 caregivers, 3 8-hour shifts a day, and those are gold. And both of those clients that we have started at 15 hours a week over a year ago, and you just grow when you do a good job and you have good caregivers. It just grows organically.
Yeah, and I think that's always the kind of the takeaway when people talk about this business model is, I said it earlier, it's a people business, right? You gotta want to be a part of a process and be with people that like, and trust, and deliver that into your communities. We really focus on that when we try to, bring on new owners here is about that people, that interaction, and giving them the information to make a great educated decision. And I think it isn't much different than from where you sit, Bill, is that you're just trying to give people great information to make a great decision and take care of them. And if you do that really well, not only you're going to keep great clients, but you said it, you're going to keep your caregivers around because they're going to be happy. And again, another question we get all the time is retention of caregivers. Can you give us just a short synopsis of how some best practices that you've figured out in order to retain top caregivers in your market?
That's always a tricky number because coming from a retail background, that turnover rate is real important because obviously you want to train people and training costs money. And having those CHOTCs or prizes or awards, it's really good when you're dealing with a store. Here it's a little bit different, and caregivers are a little bit different also. The main thing I think caregivers they want to be treated nice. I don't, and that's just me. And I believe in contests and prizes, but we don't do a lot of that here. We haven't grown to that level, let's say, where I can do that efficiently and financially efficiently. But I think in California, it's about pay. It's about how we treat them. It's about trying to figure out what their objectives are. Some people want to work part-time. Some people want a lot of hours. It's fulfilling their hour needs or their pay needs. and putting them with a good client that they're comfortable with, that they're trained to service. And consistency is it's always the best, not only for the client, but for the caregiver. If I can have a 40-hour client and they have one caregiver, we have clients like that have been with me over a year, and it's one caregiver. We bill once a week. We don't hear boo from the client. We don't hear boo from the caregiver, because we put a caregiver in there that is capable to handle that client, and they become a companion and they become a friend. So I think for us, a lot of it is pay. Is we pay as well as anybody in the industry out here, and consistency, and putting them close so they're not driving far away. But it's an industry where it's very common for caregivers to work for 2 or 3 different agencies, because let's use the example that we have a caregiver that's working 40 hours with one of our competitors. That client passes away, and now they're out of a job. And it happens to us too. It's not like working in a grocery store where you can say, hey, Mike, go work in the produce department now. I have to have another client. And some of our caregivers have kids, and some of them are single mothers. And that's a burden that we carry, because if their client passes away, now I've got this great caregiver that I know their family, and Christmas is coming, and she's working 45 hours, and her client just passed away. And, it's not, hey, can we still send the caregiver? You can't. There's nobody there. Or they get better. Let's use we had one that had hip replacement surgery. We were servicing her around the clock. One day she calls up and says, hey, I loved your service. Thanks a lot, Bill, but I don't need caregivers anymore. And that's 6 caregivers that I got to find work for. So they'll go work for another agency. And it doesn't mean they're not going to come back. And maybe 3 months later, they call my care manager again to say, hey, I'm available now. And then we try to put them to work. So it's a business where caregivers kind of come and go. But if you treat them right, if you get them with the right client where they don't feel overwhelmed and it's a good fit, I think that's what they look for, at least here in California.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And I think, Eli Collier in Nashville, I always find she always says it's best is, listen, if you care about people, you treat them right, and you treat them like people and not just a number, you're going to do better than 50% of the agency owners out there. And I think, to your point, if you're doing the right things, they're whether they're going to come back or not, they're going to come back eventually. Because they know you, they like you, and they trust you, which I think is the most important part. Bill, please.
I was just going to say, one of the things that we try to do here, because we do care for our caregivers, is not get them too excited. So if I have a client that lives close to a caregiver, a potential client that hasn't signed a contract, we don't really tell the caregiver. They're not going to call the caregiver and go, hey, are you available? We got this person that's potential. Because if that sale, for whatever reason, drops, then they feel like they're being teased. So we wait till the contract is signed, and then we go to that caregiver and try to match them up with the client. We're always conscious of what our caregivers are thinking. We want to be as transparent with them as possible.
Yeah, I think, again, it just comes down, it's people and communication. I mean, it sounds simple, right?
You're right.
And it's just effectively doing it to ensure that those two things are happening consistently. So, last thing I would love to ask you, and Bill, I first say thank you so much for your time today. You've been a great brand ambassador for the last 3 years now, and all the things that you do, from helping candidates as they go through our education process and validation calls, really just understand the model and giving them, like we talked about, the honest truth about the business, because that's what we're here to do. Any advice for somebody that's maybe on the fence of this business, saying, oh, I don't know, the license is going to take me a little bit. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of work in the beginning. Any advice you'd say to somebody that's kind of sitting there wondering, hey, I think I can do a good job, I just don't know?
I think kind of what you said, it's a journey, and to think, to be as transparent as possible, to think that you're going to open your doors and you're going to become rich, and that it takes work, and there's a learning curve, and you're going to make mistakes. And there are days when I've wanted to crawl in the corner over there in the fetal position and just go, what the heck did I do? And I keep coming to the office, and my care manager keeps coming, and we face those challenges. And we're here to solve problems. Sometimes there are problems, but we're here to solve clients' problems. How can we make people better? But it does take time, and it does take effort. And one of the cool things I think about HomeWell, and we just got back from a regional meeting, is that every owner is a little different. You know, I do secondary referrals. Some owners work with facilities, some owners work with doctors, and they'll go, you work, you know, just secondary referrals. How do you do that, Bill? How can you only do your business with secondary referrals? There's more ways to skin a cat. You figure out what you're good at. My background, my real background is Blockbuster and back from the day. And the kind of the theme at Blockbuster was do one thing and do it well. You know, rent videos and do it well. It's not that complicated. And I think we've pretty much perfected that secondary referral market. And then I go to these meetings and I talk to these other owners and they're doing something else. We're about to jump in to the VA, and it's a great business here in California. There's some accrediting that you have to go through, and it takes time, but we've gone through the whole gamut and we're about to start reaching out. So my philosophy right now is, hey, let's keep doing the secondary referral. We've got, you know, all the things in place to handle that. Now let's bring on that second care manager to handle the VA, and let's see if we can perfect that and grow our business. So again, don't think you're going to make it. You're going to come out of the gates and money's just going to start raining. But it takes time to have a vision, know where you want to go, and you know, we've been fairly successful. We want to be more successful, but I'm here, and I feel blessed, and I'm really happy to be here. So that's the advice that I would give anybody.
I love it. And we're happy that you're here, Bill. And again, again, it's one of those things. We're surrounded by a really great ownership group. Obviously you being a big part of that. And I want to say thank you again for your time today. Anybody has any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to your development director, myself, Sam. If you're in validation and you want to have a conversation with Bill, I know he's always open to having those conversations and helping continue that education process. So Bill, thank you again for your time today, my friend. Look forward to seeing you next year in Vegas at our conference, but much more success to you out there in California. And I wish you the best.
Mike, Samantha, my pleasure, and have a great weekend.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks
Bill.
everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.